Okay, continuing with Best of the West and Art, Music, and Movies. We're on Chapter 5 here, the 5th best things in Western civilization. A little bit of text in this opening section here. When you read stories about the Greeks and Romans in the Bible, you remember them. Stories are memorable. The way school teaches stuff with tests on history and dates, nobody remembers that. But Bible stories are valuable. They give you a shared group of stories and context so you can communicate with other people. It binds the people together. It's just different than regular schools where everybody forgets everything. If you ask most people, they can't remember anything from grade school or high school except, driver's ed and maybe one teacher they liked. Modern school is designed to be forgotten, to waste 12 years of a person's life from first grade to senior year of high school, so that they end up being sort of dumbed down, groomed to be functionally illiterate, feminized, minimum wage, rat race slaves. The real lesson being taught is to shut up and do as you're told, to be obedient, like a factory worker. Modern school also teaches students that the only type of learning is memorization, that you shouldn't be using your own mind, you shouldn't be thinking, you should just memorize what you were told and obey. And that if you don't get in the top 20% on some standardized BS test, then you deserve to be poor the rest of your life. Okay, you'll never become a doctor, a lawyer, or any of the theoretically high-paying jobs. As students study things like the Greeks, the Romans, the Renaissance, and the Bible, and art, they would remember that the rest of their life, and you'd be better prepared for life. You'd be articulate. Articulate people, they're harder to mess with because they can fight back in a sense. They can make their point known, their case known. I've seen lots of people who aren't articulate and they get screwed over and they're sort of helpless. They don't have enough money to get a good lawyer and they can't articulate their own defense effectively, so they just get taken advantage of. And for example, do you ever wonder why tyrants forbid the Bible, people reading the Bible? Because it puts a God above them. And people who read the Bible become a lot more street smart. It promotes freedom. Here's a quote by Horace Greeley. He says, "It is impossible to enslave, mentally or socially, a Bible-reading people. The principle of the Bible are the groundwork of freedom." That is true. Remember, it's when the people turn their back on God, God turns his back on them. You learn that from the Old Testament. It's pretty obvious, and that's also obvious that's what's happening now. Western civilization turned its back on God, which made it vulnerable and weak, and it is being destroyed. So hopefully it's going to save itself. We shall see. Roger Scruton, the art history critic. The common core of culture is religion. Tribes survive and flourish because they have gods who fuse many wills into a single will and demand and reward the sacrifices on which social life depends. Religion comes from religare, the Latin root. Ligare, to ligate, means to tie together. A surgical tie is a ligature, okay? So you tie the public together. It makes them unified and strong. One of the reasons why so many countries get their butt kicked is because they're not unified. Ireland had all these separate chieftains, so they weren't unified. Then in comes the English National Army, kicks their butt. Italy was not unified, so the different city-states are fighting with each other, Florence and Venice and Rome and whatnot, and then they couldn't defend themselves effectively, from the French, etc., from the Spanish. Okay, here's Jack Webb. He said he wrote the book How the Scots-Irish Shaped America. He also wrote Born Fighting. He said, "My culture needs to rediscover itself." Okay. Let's see what's here. Jack Webb's book was great, by the way. He covers fascinating historical events like Kings Mountain in the USA when they fought off the British. The great Scots-Irishmen like Davy Crockett. There's been tons of Scots-Irish American heroes. Okay, guys like Sam Houston, George Patton, Douglas MacArthur. Our best military soldiers in every one of the last major wars, pretty much in all of them, have largely been Scots-Irish guys. That's not widely known, but they're the best group of military fighting men in the whole world, the Scots-Irish. Best soldier for USA in World War I was Sergeant York, Congressional Medal of Honor winner. The best guys in World War II, George Patton, Douglas MacArthur. George Patton on the European front, Douglas MacArthur on the Pacific front. Scots-Irish guys, okay? Best guy in Vietnam War, David Hackworth. He was Scots-Irish guy. The best guy in let's say like the Korean War. Now that's debatable. There's a lot of great guys in the Korean War that you could talk about. But for example, Chesty Puller of the Marines, and I think the other guy was Raymond Davis, another Scots-Irish guy. So I'm just telling you, they're ubiquitous. The other most decorated guy in World War II, Audie Murphy, Scots-Irish guy. So if you study it, you'll be amazed at how often that is the case. I was shocked by it. I knew they were notorious for that, but it goes way back. Go back to Civil War, Stonewall Jackson. Go back before that, President Andrew Jackson. Okay, probably one of the best presidents ever. All right, let's see what they say. We're seeing a lot of censorship nowadays, and here's a good quote by Heinrich Heine. He says, "Whenever they burn books, remember in the end they will also burn human beings." That's true. That's what's kind of coming, I hope. I certainly hope not, but it looks like that's coming. Okay, great art's a sign of individualism and freedom. Okay, when you look back on history, what you see, it's always the same thing. Get rid of the men, plunder the towns, and then sell the women and children into slavery, and abuse them. Matthew chapter 12, verses 25 to 27. If a kingdom is divided against itself, it cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, it cannot stand. No one can enter a strong man's house to steal his possessions unless he first ties up the strong man. Then he can plunder his house. The strong man of Western civilization is the white Christian man. He's the one who got the Declaration of Independence, who got the Constitution, who made everybody free and protected, okay? And now everybody wants to get rid of the white Christian man. It's been the coalition of the fringes. Everybody's turned against him because once the white Christian man is pushed out of civilization, he's being pushed out everywhere. All this stuff about DEI, affirmative action, they don't care about minorities. The goal is just to get rid of the white Christian man. Oh, we need more women in science and STEM fields and all this stuff. They just want to get the white Christian man out. They don't care about these other groups. Because once he's gone, in comparison, everybody else is weak and will be destroyed. Okay, so they just need to get him out of the way. That's the truth. You could check it for yourself. If you open a book, you'll see this has been in writing for a long time. The Communist Party had figured this out a long time ago. That's why they brought about feminism, to turn the women against the men, to destroy society. That's why they feminized the public schools. That's why there's all these feminizing chemicals in the drinking water and in the processed food. Because there's no such thing as a real gynocracy, okay? Gynocracy can't protect itself. The women never save the town, okay? They never do. Go back and read history for thousands of years. You'll see they never save the town. They're always sold into slavery, RAPED, or bumped off, okay? That's what happens. All right, it's amazing how few people read. It's like almost nobody knows anything about history nowadays. That's kind of frightening. That's why they took the Greeks and Romans out of the school. Because once you learn the story of the Greeks and Romans, you see all the things that happen. You're like, holy crap, we don't want that to happen, all the bad things that happen. Okay, smart people like reading books because that's where most of the information is. You can learn a lot from the internet, watching videos, and that's great, and it gets you aware of something, and then you go read more about it or watch more videos on it as well. Here's a few other quotes by some of these guys here. Charlton Heston, telling us what to think has evolved into telling us what to say, and so telling us what to do can't be far behind. He was a great American hero, great American actor, one of the best of all time. Philip K. Dick, he's a guy who wrote some pretty famous novels, okay? He said, like Logan's Run, he said, the most basic tool for the manipulation of reality is the manipulation of words. If you can control the meaning of words, you can control the people who must use those words. Yeah, you'll notice a lot of words have changed their meaning in the last 40 years, okay? And a lot of this is about controlling people. A big thing you'll see in control is centralization of everything, computerization of everything. Because centralization and computerization of things enable a very small group of people like the Communist Party to control everybody else, okay? What you want is decentralization. You want small family farms. You want education to be local. You want the individual to have some say. You want a man's home to be his castle. A man should have some privacy. He should have free speech. Okay, all of that stuff is being gotten rid of, and that's the descent. The road to serfdom, as Hayek had said. Okay, when somebody says you can't use certain words and tells you what to say and it's political correctness, you're being degraded, okay? It's saying that you are not worthy of free speech. You are not worthy of a liberal arts education. A liberal arts education meant, back in the days of Rome and the Middle Ages, for a free man. All right. Here's Camille Paglia. She said, the venerable emeritus professor still at Yale when I entered graduate school in the 1960s may have been reserved puritanical wasps, but they were men of honor who had given their lives to scholarship. Today in elite schools, honor and ethics are gone, and that's sad. They don't hire professors based on being the best one. They hire them based on, being a cooperative, conformist low IQ chump, all right? And people will tell you, oh, the professor says we need diversity in hiring professors. That's absolute BS. They're not interested in diversity. You ask that university what percentage of their college professors are conservative and Christian. You'll find it's next to none. Okay, a white male, it's hard for them to get a job as a university professor unless they're, LGBTQ, anti-American, anti-Christian, atheist or something, or trans something, okay? It's ridiculous, okay? Can you imagine if you picked your basketball team based on, you need one person from every group? No, you pick the best players. And if you're going to have a department of scholarship, you should pick the best scholars, the best teachers, the best scientists. All of this stuff is being done to destroy America. And most people are too stupid to realize it, and they think it's okay. No, it's not okay. America is destroyed, compared to what it was when I was growing up. It's so weak it's not even funny. Okay, when a person doesn't know history, it's very easy to trick them. So all these people that don't know the Bible, don't know the Greeks and the Romans, they're intellectual lightweights. You can't be intellectually sophisticated if you don't know the Greeks, Romans, and the Bible, okay? You don't have to read the whole Bible, but you have to know Genesis and the Gospels. That's the minimum you have to know from the Bible. Okay, and then the modern college, turns kids against their parents, turns them against religion, turns them into atheistic chumps. Camille Paglia, the number one problem in academia today is not ignorant students, it's ignorant professors. Okay, now here's a quote from Charles Murray here. He says, I come to the end of this book, this is a book about the greatest human accomplishments of all time. He says, convinced that religion is indispensable in igniting great accomplishment in the arts. Great art requires a source of inspiration. When humans are performing at the height of human capacity, it seems wise to think they are doing something right. Johann Sebastian Bach does not need to explain himself. He made a prima facie case of his way of looking at the universe needs to be taken seriously. It behooves us to do so. Look, if you want to be a great creative artist, the Christians have done almost all the great creative art. There's a few exceptions to that, but almost all of it comes from the Christians. So that's where you want to be. And the best ones tend to be the most devout ones. Johann Sebastian Bach, super devout. And the other ones are devout too. Beethoven, Handel. Okay. Okay, we'll do the paintings, another one in the next session. That'll be it for today. Hope you found that helpful.